The first sign that something was wrong came at 3:17 Earth Standard Time, when every deep space sensor surrounding the planet simultaneously detected a vessel that should not have been there. Commander Daniel Reyes was halfway through a routine tactical briefing aboard the EAS Resolute, Earth's primary orbital defense station, when the room suddenly went silent. The tactical display above the table changed from the usual blue network of satellites and patrol routes to a single red trajectory cutting inward from beyond the orbit of Neptune. Daniel stared at it for several seconds before asking, "What am I looking at?" Lieutenant Sarah Malik, the sensor officer, swallowed before answering. "Unknown vessel, Commander. It's moving through the outer system on a direct trajectory toward Earth." Daniel looked at the trajectory again. "How long until it reaches us?" 38 minutes. Daniel frowned. 38 minutes from Neptune? Malik nodded. "They're moving very fast." That was the first thing Daniel didn't like. The second was the fact that the vessel had appeared almost without warning. Humanity had spent nearly 40 years learning that the universe was not empty. The discovery of faster-than-light travel had changed Earth forever, but first contact had not been the glorious moment most people imagined. Humanity had learned quickly that the galaxy was full of civilizations that were older, stronger, and considerably more experienced than Earth. Some had welcomed humanity. Some had ignored it. A few had quietly warned their citizens not to travel anywhere near human-controlled space. Humans were still considered newcomers, and their military fleet was small compared with the great powers of the galaxy. Earth's greatest advantage had always been the same thing that had helped humanity survive its own history: adaptability. Humans could build something badly, break it, rebuild it, and somehow make it work better the second time. "Can we identify the ship?" Daniel asked. Malik worked through several layers of sensor data. "Negative. Their transponder isn't responding." "Weapons?" "Unknown." Daniel turned toward Admiral Thomas Vale, who had been silently watching the display from the other side of the room. Vale was an older officer with decades of experience in Earth's defense forces, and he had developed a reputation for assuming that every unexpected event had a second explanation. "Could be a military vessel," Vale said. "Could be a damaged civilian vessel. Could be a reconnaissance platform." Daniel nodded. "Or a trap." "Exactly." The tactical display suddenly changed again. A new signal appeared. This time, it wasn't encrypted. It was a simple transmission repeating on every emergency communication frequency. The translation system processed it, then displayed the message in English. "Unknown vessel to Earth Defense Network. Our vessel has suffered catastrophic system failure. We request permission to enter your territory for emergency repairs. We do not seek hostilities." For several seconds, nobody spoke. Daniel looked at Vale. "They know we're here." Vale nodded. "And they know enough about us to request assistance." Daniel looked back at the screen. "Can we identify the language?" "Aurelian Compact Standard," Malik replied. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. The Aurelian Compact wasn't an enemy of Earth, but it wasn't an ally either. The Compact controlled dozens of worlds and possessed one of the most advanced military fleets humanity had ever encountered. Their ships were famous for energy shields that could absorb impacts that would destroy human vessels. If an Aurelian military ship was asking Earth for repairs, something had gone very wrong. "Open a communication channel," Daniel ordered. Malik activated the connection. "Unidentified Aurelian vessel, this is Commander Daniel Reyes aboard the EAS Resolute. Your request has been received. State the nature of your damage and confirm the number of personnel aboard." A few seconds passed before an alien voice answered. "Commander Reyes, this is Ambassador Lyra Venn aboard the Aurelia's Grace. We have 214 personnel aboard, including civilian specialists and military security personnel. Our primary reactor is damaged, our jump system is offline, and our atmospheric containment systems are failing in 3 sections." Daniel glanced at Vale. "How long can you remain operational?" Lyra's response came quickly. "If we continue on our present course, approximately 52 minutes. Daniel looked at the trajectory. "And if you stop?" "We lose life support within 11 minutes. Daniel leaned back in his chair. This wasn't a simple request. The alien ship was dying. "Ambassador Venn, you will be permitted to enter Earth-controlled space under emergency humanitarian protocol," Daniel said. "You will shut down all offensive weapons before reaching lunar orbit. Your vessel will be escorted to the Resolute repair platform. No armed personnel will leave your ship without authorization. Human engineers will board your vessel first. There was a brief silence. Then Lyra replied, agreed. Vale immediately looked at Daniel. You're allowing an unknown alien warship to dock with our primary defense station. Daniel kept his eyes on the tactical display. I'm allowing 214 people to avoid dying in space. And if they attack? Vale asked. Daniel finally looked at him. Then we deal with that when it happens. Vale didn't look convinced, but he nodded. 34 minutes later, the Aurelia's Grace emerged from the darkness. Even damaged, it was enormous. Its silver-gray hull stretched nearly 600 meters, with long curved sections running along its spine like the bones of some enormous creature. Several areas of the ship were blackened from what appeared to be weapons damage. One engine section was completely dark. Another flickered irregularly. Daniel watched from the Resolute's observation deck as the alien vessel passed beneath them. That's a warship, Vale said quietly. Daniel nodded. Yes. And someone hurt it badly. Yes. Which means there's something out there that can hurt a ship like that. Daniel didn't answer. The Aurelia's Grace was secured to the outer repair ring, and Earth's engineering teams began moving aboard. At the center of that team was Dr. Maya Chen, chief engineer of Earth's Extraterrestrial Systems Division. Maya had spent 12 years studying alien technology and had developed an unusual reputation among military officers. She wasn't reckless, exactly. She simply had very little respect for the phrase, "That's how it's always been done." Daniel met her at the docking corridor. "Doctor." Maya nodded. "Commander. Tell me what you need." 3 hours. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You have 30 minutes. Maya stared at him. "Then I need better engineers." Daniel almost smiled. "You have the best engineers on Earth." Maya turned toward the enormous alien vessel. "Then we'll see what they can do." The first inspection revealed damage far worse than the external scans had suggested. The reactor was operating at only 41% capacity, the shield grid had lost 6 emitters, and several internal power conduits were badly damaged. Maya moved through the engineering compartment with a team of human and Aurelian technicians. The alien engineers were efficient, disciplined, and extremely protective of their technology. Maya quickly noticed something strange about their systems. Every major component had enormous safety limits. Their technology was powerful, but it was designed to prevent any system from operating outside predetermined parameters. Why is the reactor only drawing 60% of available output? Maya asked. An Aurelian engineer named Tarek stared at her through the transparent visor of his environmental suit. Because 60% is the approved operating threshold. Maya looked at the reactor readings. But the system can handle more. That is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant if you're trying to keep your ship alive. Tarek hesitated. Maya pointed toward the damaged power network. Your problem isn't that the reactor is weak. Your problem is that your power distribution system can't adapt to the damage. Tarek stared at her. Can you fix it? Maya smiled faintly. I can try. For the next 20 minutes, Maya and her team worked without stopping. They rerouted several damaged power pathways, installed a temporary adaptive regulator, and changed the way the reactor distributed energy across the damaged systems. Nobody expected what happened next. The reactor output increased. The ship's failing system stabilized. The shield network began rebuilding its own damaged circuits. Lights that had been flickering throughout the engineering deck suddenly became steady. Tarek stared at the readings in disbelief. That is impossible. Maya looked at the diagnostic display. No, it's just inefficient design. Tarek turned toward her. What did you do? Maya's expression slowly changed as she studied the numbers. I repaired your power system. She paused. But I think we may have done something else. Across the station, Daniel watched as the Aurelia's Grace suddenly came back to life on the tactical display. One system after another returned to normal. The alien ship's damaged shields began charging. Its engines stabilized. Even its life support network showed improved performance. Vale stepped beside him. What happened? Daniel looked toward the engineering section. Maya happened. A moment later, a priority message arrived from Dr. Chen. Daniel opened it. Her voice came through the command deck. Commander, the repairs worked. But there's something you need to know. Daniel waited. Maya continued, we didn't just restore their systems to their original specifications. A pause. We made them better. For several seconds after Maya's message, Commander Daniel Reyes remained silent. Around him, the command deck continued operating normally, but the atmosphere had changed. Officers who had been watching the Aurelia's Grace as a damaged alien warship were now looking at it differently. Daniel opened the engineering report on his console and studied the numbers. "How much better?" he asked. Maya's answer came immediately. "The main power network is operating at 118% of the original specification." Daniel frowned. 118? That's the current stable output. We haven't pushed it any further. Admiral Vale stepped closer. "Can the ship handle that?" Maya hesitated. "That's what I'm trying to determine." Daniel looked at the tactical display. "Then don't push it. We were asked to repair a ship, not redesign one." Maya gave a short laugh. "Commander, I wasn't trying to redesign anything. Their system was damaged. I simply gave the power somewhere else to go." Daniel knew Maya well enough to understand that the phrase, simply, usually meant something complicated had just happened. Inside the alien engineering section, the Aurelians were equally confused. Their technicians had expected the human engineers to restore damaged components and replace a few conduits. Instead, the ship's internal monitoring systems were reporting performance levels they had never seen before. Tarek, the Aurelian engineer who had been working beside Maya, stared at the readings. "Our reactor has never maintained this output." Maya examined the display. "Then your reactor has been underused." Tarek looked almost offended. "The reactor has always operated within certified parameters." "Certified parameters aren't the same thing as maximum potential." Maya reached toward another control panel. Tarek immediately stopped her. "Do not alter that." Maya raised both hands. "Fine." Tarek looked at her suspiciously. "You change things very quickly." "That's because things break quickly. That is not how our engineering philosophy works." Maya smiled. "I've noticed." The first 24 hours passed without incident. Earth's engineers continued repairing the ship, while Aurelian specialists monitored every modification. The damaged shield emitters were replaced with temporary human components. The atmospheric containment system was stabilized. One of the auxiliary engines was restored. Every improvement was tested carefully before it was activated, and Maya repeatedly reminded her team that the Aurelian vessel had not been designed around human modifications. "We don't know how these systems interact over long periods," she told them. "We're improving individual systems, not claiming we've redesigned the entire ship." Her team understood. The Aurelians, however, were becoming increasingly interested in the human approach. They had expected primitive improvisation. What they were seeing was something different. Human engineers were willing to experiment while simultaneously testing the consequences of every change. Their technology was less advanced, but their engineering culture was flexible. The diplomatic side of the situation was developing just as quickly. Ambassador Lyra Venn had arrived aboard the Resolute station to oversee negotiations and ensure that the repair operation remained peaceful. Daniel met her in the diplomatic observation lounge, where enormous windows overlooked the Earth below. For Lyra, it was the first time she had seen humanity's homeworld from orbit. She stood quietly for several seconds, studying the blue planet beneath them. "Your world is beautiful," she said. Daniel looked through the glass. "It usually is." Lyra turned toward him. "Usually?" Daniel smiled. "You should see it during hurricane season." She didn't understand the joke. Daniel realized that explaining weather humor to an alien ambassador probably wasn't going to help. The meeting had been scheduled as a formal diplomatic discussion, but Daniel deliberately kept the atmosphere relaxed. The table between them contained data tablets, diplomatic documents, and 2 cups of coffee. Lyra looked suspiciously at the dark liquid in front of her. "This is the beverage you insisted was important to human negotiations?" Daniel nodded. "Coffee. It smells like burnt plant material." "That's because it is burnt plant material." Lyra stared at him. "And humans voluntarily consume it?" Daniel took a sip. "Millions of us do." Lyra carefully lifted the cup and took the smallest possible taste. Her expression immediately changed. "That is terrible." Daniel laughed. For the first time since the alien ship had entered Earth orbit, the tension in the room disappeared. Lyra looked offended by his amusement. "You enjoy watching diplomatic representatives suffer?" "Only when they're honest about coffee." She shook her head. "Your species is strange." Daniel smiled. "We've been told." Their conversation slowly moved away from small talk and toward more serious subjects. Lyra explained that the Aurelia's Grace had been traveling through a remote region when it encountered an unidentified hostile force. The ship had been damaged during the escape. She deliberately avoided discussing the identity of the attackers. Daniel noticed but didn't press her. He understood that diplomacy involved knowing when not to ask questions. Instead, he asked about the Aurelian Compact. Lyra explained that the Compact was not a single empire but a federation of worlds united by defense agreements, trade treaties, and mutual security obligations. Their military technology had been developed over centuries of conflict. That explains the ship, Daniel said. You build everything as if you're expecting a war. Lyra looked at him. We are. Daniel's expression became serious. With whom? Lyra stared through the window toward Earth. That depends on the century. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, and Daniel found himself unexpectedly comfortable speaking with her. Lyra was cautious but intelligent, and she seemed genuinely interested in humanity. She asked about Earth's military strength, its orbital defenses, and its relationship with neighboring civilizations. Daniel answered some questions and avoided others. Then Lyra asked the question he had been expecting. Your engineers have altered our vessel. Daniel nodded. They've repaired it. That isn't what I asked. Daniel leaned back. What exactly are you concerned about? Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. Our ship is performing beyond its original specifications. Daniel remained calm. Yes. How much beyond? I don't have the exact figure. Lyra studied him. You should. Daniel paused. Why? Lyra lowered her voice. Because the systems you improved are military systems. Before Daniel could answer, Maya entered the room carrying a data tablet. She stopped when she noticed Lyra. Ambassador. Lyra nodded. Dr. Chen. Maya glanced at Daniel. We need to talk. Daniel gestured toward the empty chair. Go ahead. Maya placed the tablet on the table. We've stabilized most of the ship, but I found something unusual. Lyra immediately became attentive. What? Maya pulled up a technical diagram. Your power distribution system was designed to isolate damaged sections. That's normal. The problem is that your system isolates too aggressively. When one component fails, it cuts power to neighboring systems even when they are still functional. Lyra looked at the diagram. That is intentional. Maya nodded. I know, but it's inefficient. She pointed to another section. We changed the routing logic so the system can dynamically redirect power around damaged areas. Lyra stared at the display. How much improvement? Maya answered honestly. It depends on the type of damage. In the current condition, anywhere between 12 and 20%. Lyra's expression changed. Daniel noticed immediately. Ambassador? Lyra didn't answer for several seconds. Finally she asked, did your engineers alter the combat architecture? Maya shook her head. Not intentionally. Lyra looked at Daniel. That distinction may not matter. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Why? Lyra stood slowly. Because in the compact, improving a military vessel's combat efficiency without authorization is not considered a repair. Maya frowned. We weren't trying to improve combat efficiency. We were trying to keep your people alive. Lyra looked toward Earth again. I believe you. Her voice was quieter now. That's what worries me. That evening, Daniel received a priority communication from the Aurelian ship. The message was encrypted at the highest diplomatic level. He opened it and watched as a military insignia appeared on the screen. The transmission contained only a brief statement. The Aurelian Compact has reviewed preliminary data regarding the repairs performed by human personnel. Further transfer of technical information is suspended pending military assessment. Daniel read the message twice. Vale stood beside him. What does that mean? Daniel looked toward the stars beyond the station. It means the people who owned that ship just realized what our engineers did. Vale's expression hardened. And? Daniel closed the transmission. And I think the coffee meeting just ended. By sunrise over Earth, the situation had changed. The Aurelia's Grace was still docked at the Resolute repair platform, but the atmosphere surrounding the ship had become noticeably different. Human security personnel had been quietly increased around the docking ring, while Aurelian security officers had stopped allowing their technicians to work without supervision. Nobody had issued a threat, and nobody had broken the agreement, but trust was beginning to disappear. Commander Daniel Reyes arrived on the command deck shortly after 6 o'clock and found Admiral Thomas Vale already standing over the tactical display. We've got movement, Vale said without looking away. Daniel walked toward the display. From where? Outer system. A series of markers appeared beyond the orbit of Mars. Daniel stared at them. How many? Vale zoomed in. 12 confirmed warships, 2 command vessels, several smaller support craft. Daniel's expression tightened. Aurelian? Every one of them. The command deck became quiet. Daniel studied the formation carefully. The Aurelian vessels weren't moving directly toward Earth. They had stopped well beyond the moon and were holding a disciplined defensive formation. That distinction mattered. An attacking fleet would normally accelerate toward a target, while this fleet had positioned itself as if it were waiting. Are their weapons powered? Daniel asked. Vale shook his head. Not fully, but their shield systems are active. Daniel nodded. So they're showing us they can defend themselves without saying they're preparing to attack. Vale finally turned toward him. Or they're showing us they don't need to fire first. Daniel understood the warning. 12 Aurelian warships represented a military force far larger than anything Earth had stationed in that region. Humanity had orbital defenses, missile platforms, fighter wings, and a small fleet of modern warships, but the balance was not remotely equal. If the Aurelians wanted to force their way onto the station, Earth would have a difficult time stopping them. Open a channel, Daniel said. The communication link activated, and after several seconds the face of Ambassador Lyra Venn appeared on the display. She looked tired. Commander Reyes. Ambassador, your fleet has arrived. Lyra nodded. Yes. Daniel kept his voice calm. Should I assume this is a diplomatic visit? Lyra hesitated. I wish I could tell you that it was. Daniel glanced at Vale. What's changed? Lyra looked directly at him. The compact military has reviewed the preliminary repair data. They believe your engineers have made modifications that could significantly increase the combat effectiveness of our vessel. Daniel answered, our engineers made emergency repairs. I know. Then why is an entire fleet sitting outside the moon? Lyra's expression hardened slightly. Because the military does not share my confidence. Daniel leaned closer to the console. Are you telling me your government doesn't trust us? Lyra paused before answering. I'm telling you that governments rarely trust what they don't understand. The communication ended several minutes later, and Daniel immediately ordered a secure conference with Earth's Defense Command. Admiral Vale, Defense Secretary Miriam Cole, Dr. Maya Chen, and several senior officers appeared on the holographic table. Vale opened the meeting. We have 12 Aurelian warships in lunar space. Their military command is demanding access to the technical data from the repairs. Maya folded her arms. Access to everything? Everything. That's not happening. Defense Secretary Cole looked at her. Doctor, if refusing them could trigger a conflict, we need to consider the consequences. Maya looked frustrated. We saved their ship. We didn't steal anything. Vale interrupted. Intentions don't matter anymore. They believe we've discovered something valuable. Daniel looked at Maya. Have we? She thought for a moment. Yes. Everyone became silent. Maya brought up a technical model of the Aurelia's Grace. Their engineering is extremely advanced, but it's based on a fixed architecture. The system assumes that when a component fails, surrounding systems should isolate themselves. Human systems are more adaptive because our designers assume something unexpected will eventually happen. Cole asked, and that gave us an advantage? Maya shook her head. Not exactly. It gave us an opportunity. There's a difference. Daniel studied the model. Could the modifications be used as weapons? Maya hesitated. Potentially. But not because we designed them as weapons. Better power distribution means better shield recovery, faster engine response, and more efficient weapons if the ship has weapons attached to that network. Vale looked at Daniel. That's exactly what the Aurelians are afraid of. Daniel nodded slowly. And are they right to be afraid? Maya answered carefully. If we were trying to build a superior warship from their technology, we'd need years. We don't understand enough yet. Vale's expression softened slightly. That's the answer I wanted. Maya raised an eyebrow. Why? Because it means we're not suddenly sitting on a magic button that wins a war. Daniel looked between them. Good. Because I don't want anyone thinking we are. Later that morning, the Aurelian military delegation requested direct negotiations. The request was accepted, and High Commander Cale Thorne appeared on the diplomatic channel. He was an imposing figure even through a holographic projection, wearing dark military armor marked with the insignia of the Compact Defense Command. Unlike Lyra, he made no attempt at friendly conversation. Commander Reyes, he said. Your engineers have altered a military vessel belonging to the Aurelian Compact. Daniel answered, "Your vessel was damaged and requested assistance. We repaired it. You increased its performance." Apparently. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Do not mistake restraint for ignorance. We know what your engineers have done." Daniel remained calm. "Then you know we didn't do it deliberately." Kale leaned forward. "Intent does not remove capability." Daniel paused. "What exactly do you want?" Kale answered immediately. "All technical records, all modified components, and unrestricted access to the engineers who performed the work." Maya, standing beside Daniel, quietly whispered, "He's asking for everything." Daniel nodded. "I know. We can provide diagnostic information," Daniel said. "We can allow your specialists to inspect the repaired systems. But we will not surrender our engineering methods or hand over human personnel." Kale's voice became colder. "You are in no position to negotiate." Vale stepped forward. "And you are in no position to dictate terms inside Earth-controlled space." Daniel raised one hand, stopping him from continuing. Kale noticed the exchange. "You are preparing your military." Daniel answered, "We're preparing to defend our station." "Against us?" "Against uncertainty." Kale stared at him for several seconds. "Then allow me to remove the uncertainty. If your government does not surrender the enhanced technology, the Compact will consider your possession of it a security threat." Daniel looked directly into the holographic image. "Are you threatening Earth?" Kale replied, "I am informing Earth of the consequences." The communication ended. For several seconds nobody moved. Then Defense Secretary Cole asked, "What do we do now?" Daniel walked toward the main observation window. Below them, Earth filled half the sky, blue and white beneath the sunlight. Above it, thousands of satellites and defense platforms moved silently through orbit. "We don't fire," Daniel said. Vale nodded. "And if they do?" Daniel looked at him. "Then we defend ourselves." Maya joined them at the window. "Commander, there's another problem." Daniel turned. "What?" She held up her tablet. "The enhancements are still working, but I've been running long-duration simulations." Daniel waited. "And?" Maya's expression was uneasy. "The improvements are stable under normal conditions. But if the ship pushes the reactor beyond its new operating range, the system could become unstable." Vale looked at her. "How unstable?" Maya answered, "Unstable enough to destroy the ship." Daniel's expression hardened. "Does the Aurelian military know?" "Not yet." Before Daniel could respond, every warning light on the command deck turned amber. Lieutenant Malik rushed toward them. "Commander, the Aurelian fleet is changing formation." Daniel looked at the tactical display. The 12 warships were moving into a tighter formation around the damaged Aurelia's Grace. "Are they attacking?" he asked. Malik shook her head. "No, sir." She zoomed in on the display. "They're just making sure we can't reach their ship without going through them." Daniel stared at the formation. Vale quietly said, "That's a blockade." Daniel nodded. "No." He looked toward the stars. "It's a warning." Then another transmission arrived. This time it came directly from the Aurelian flagship. Kale Thorne's voice filled the command deck. "Commander Reyes, your 6-hour window has begun. Surrender the enhanced technology, or the Compact will take measures to secure it." Daniel looked at the fleet surrounding the alien ship. Then he looked at Earth below. "Tell them," he said quietly, "Earth does not surrender technology because someone arrives with warships." The command deck fell silent. Outside the station, the Aurelian fleet remained motionless. For the first time since the Aurelia's Grace had entered the solar system, both civilizations were no longer simply negotiating. They were measuring each other. The 6-hour deadline began without a single weapon being fired, but Commander Daniel Reyes knew that silence did not mean safety. From the command deck of the EAS Resolute, he watched the Aurelian fleet maintain its position around the damaged Aurelia's Grace. The formation was precise, almost unnervingly so. Every warship had a designated position, every sensor array was pointed toward Earth, and every movement appeared calculated long before it happened. Human defense ships had moved into their own positions around the planet, not forming an attack formation but creating overlapping defensive zones around the orbital station, the Moon, and the most important communication satellites. Daniel had ordered every captain to avoid aggressive maneuvers. "Nobody crosses the Aurelian perimeter," he told them. "Nobody locks weapons unless we are directly threatened. We are here to prevent a war, not demonstrate how quickly we can start one." Admiral Vale stood beside him, studying the tactical display. "That's a reasonable order." Daniel looked at him. You sound surprised. Vale gave a faint smile. I'm surprised you're still giving reasonable orders. Down in the engineering section, Dr. Maya Chen had a different problem. The enhancements she had created were performing better than expected, but that improvement had exposed another weakness. She stood beside the Aurelian reactor with Tarek and 3 human engineers while streams of diagnostic information moved across the transparent screens. The reactor is stable at the current load, Maya said. Tarek looked at the readings. Then the modification is successful. Maya shook her head. No, the modification is functional. That's different. Tarek tilted his head. Explain. Maya pointed toward the reactor's energy flow graph. Your original system was designed to operate within a narrow range. We widened that range because your power distribution network was wasting energy. But the more efficiently we move power, the more heat the reactor has to remove. Tarek stared at the graph. How much heat? Maya enlarged the display. Enough that if your ship goes into sustained combat and pushes the reactor above its current output, the cooling system could fall behind. Tarek was silent. Maya continued, the ship could fight harder, but it couldn't necessarily fight longer. Tarek looked at her. So your enhancement has created a new weakness. Maya nodded. Exactly. That's why we don't call this finished. Meanwhile, Ambassador Lyra Ven was receiving increasingly urgent messages from the Aurelian fleet. High Commander Cale Thorne wanted the repair data immediately. Lyra refused to authorize unrestricted access. She understood the military's fear, but she also understood what had actually happened aboard the Aurelia's Grace. Humanity had not stolen Aurelian technology. The humans had encountered a damaged system and found a more efficient way to make it work. Yet Lyra knew that intent rarely mattered once military analysts saw the numbers. She contacted Cale directly. You are surrounding Earth over a repair modification. Cale's face appeared on her private communication screen. We are securing a strategic asset. Lyra frowned. The strategic asset is a damaged ship carrying our own people. It is also a military vessel now operating beyond certified specifications because human engineers modified it. Lyra leaned forward. They saved us. Cale's expression didn't change, and they may have accidentally shown us that our fleet has weaknesses we didn't know existed. Lyra paused. Then perhaps we should learn from them. Cale shook his head. You still don't understand the danger. At 9:40 Earth Standard Time, a small human reconnaissance drone was launched from the Resolute. It was an ordinary sensor platform, lightly armored and completely unarmed. Its mission was to monitor the Aurelian fleet from a safe distance. Daniel had approved the mission personally. Keep it outside their defensive perimeter, he instructed Lieutenant Malik. No exceptions. Malik nodded. Understood. The drone moved slowly toward the outer edge of the Aurelian formation, collecting data on engine output, shield activity, and communications. For almost 20 minutes, everything went according to plan. Then a navigation error occurred. A minor gravitational fluctuation near the moon altered the drone's trajectory by less than 2 degrees. It wasn't enough to matter under normal circumstances, but it pushed the drone across the invisible boundary the Aurelians had established around their fleet. The Aurelian sensors immediately detected it. A warning transmission was sent, but because of a temporary communications delay, the message reached Earth several seconds after the drone had already crossed the boundary. Unknown human craft, the Aurelian transmission stated, you have entered a restricted defensive zone. Alter course immediately. Malik saw the warning appear on her console. Commander, we've got a problem. Daniel turned. What kind? Recon drone crossed their perimeter. Daniel immediately ordered the drone to reverse course. Send an apology. Tell them it was accidental. Malik transmitted the message. Aurelian command, this is Earth defense. The vessel entered your perimeter due to a navigation error. It is withdrawing immediately. For several seconds there was no response. Then the Aurelian fleet shifted. Daniel stood up. What are they doing? Vale watched the display. One of their defense ships is tracking the drone. Tell them not to fire. Malik transmitted another message. Aurelian command, repeat, the drone is unarmed and withdrawing. The Aurelian ship did not respond. Its weapons system charged. Daniel's voice became firm. Destroying an unarmed drone would be an unnecessary escalation. Vale looked at him. If they fire, what then? Daniel didn't answer. A bright flash appeared on the tactical display. The human reconnaissance drone disappeared. For a moment, the command deck was completely silent. Malik stared at her console. Drone destroyed. Vale slowly turned toward Daniel. They just fired on us. Daniel's jaw tightened. They fired on a machine. Vale's voice was colder. Today it's a machine. Daniel ordered the entire fleet to remain on defensive status. No retaliatory strike. No pursuit. No weapons lock. The decision immediately triggered arguments across the command network. Several officers believed Earth had to respond or risk appearing weak. Daniel rejected the argument. We don't start a war because someone destroyed a drone. Vale looked at him. Then what do we do? Daniel answered, we make sure they understand exactly what happened. A formal diplomatic protest was transmitted to the Aurelian fleet. Kale responded within minutes. The human craft violated a declared security perimeter. Our defense system acted according to standing protocol. Daniel replied, your defense system destroyed an unarmed vessel after it was already withdrawing. Kale answered, your explanation does not change the violation. Daniel stared at the holographic image. Neither does yours. While the two commanders argued, Maya suddenly received an emergency alert from the engineering section. She rushed to the nearest display and froze. No. Tarek turned toward her. What is it? Maya pulled up the Aurelian fleet's sensor telemetry. One of the warships had suddenly reduced engine output. Then its shield signature began fluctuating. That ship is losing power. Tarek stared at the readings. Impossible. Its reactor is fully operational. Maya shook her head. Not the reactor. The cooling network. She enlarged the thermal map. It's overheating. Daniel received the alert seconds later. Maya, report. Her voice came through the command deck. Commander, we have a serious problem. One of the Aurelian warships is experiencing a thermal cascade. Vale immediately asked, can it recover? Maya hesitated. Maybe. Daniel looked at the tactical display as the alien warship slowly drifted out of formation. What caused it? Maya's answer was quiet. I think we're looking at the same design weakness I found aboard their ship. Daniel stared at the failing vessel. The reactor problem? Not exactly, Maya said. Something bigger. Another alarm sounded. The Aurelian warship's shields dropped by 30%. Maya continued, if I'm right, Commander, the Aurelians don't have one damaged ship. She looked at the data again. They may have an entire fleet built around the same weakness. The command deck of the EAS Resolute became unusually quiet after Maya's final words. Commander Daniel Reyes stared at the tactical display, where one Aurelian warship was slowly drifting away from the formation. Its shield output continued to fall while its thermal signature climbed. Around it, the other Aurelian vessels remained perfectly still, as if none of them wanted to reveal how serious the problem might be. Can you confirm the failure? Daniel asked. Maya answered through the communication system. I'm 90% certain. Admiral Vale folded his arms. 90% isn't enough to make a decision involving an alien fleet. Maya looked at the diagnostic display. Then give me 5 minutes. Daniel nodded. You have 5. Maya immediately returned to the engineering section, while Daniel ordered every sensor platform around Earth to observe the disabled Aurelian vessel without approaching it. He did not want to give Kale another reason to believe humanity was preparing an attack. 5 minutes later, Maya contacted the command deck again. Commander, I've confirmed it. Daniel looked at Vale. What exactly? Maya brought up a technical comparison between the Aurelia's Grace and the damaged warship. The cooling architecture is almost identical. Same distribution logic. Same emergency isolation system. Same thermal control assumptions. Vale frowned. And? Maya took a breath. The design has a weakness. When the reactor is forced to compensate for sudden power fluctuations, the cooling network responds too slowly. Daniel asked, how serious? Maya answered, normally? Manageable. During combat? Dangerous. Vale looked at the Aurelian fleet. How dangerous? Maya hesitated. If several ships are pushed beyond their normal operating range at the same time, the failures could spread through the fleet. Daniel stared at her. You're saying their ships could overheat during combat? Yes. And they don't know? Maya shook her head. I don't think they do. Admiral Vale's expression changed. Commander, this is a strategic advantage. Daniel didn't respond. Vale continued, if their fleet attacks us, we now know how to make their ships fail. Daniel turned toward him. No, we know how their ships might fail. That's different. Vale raised an eyebrow. You're splitting hairs. No, I'm keeping people alive. Daniel looked back at the display. We don't know how their systems behave under actual combat conditions. We don't know whether every ship has the same vulnerability. We don't know what their backup systems can do. Maya nodded. Exactly. The simulations are based on limited data. Vale sighed. Fine, but we should still prepare. Daniel agreed. Prepare, yes. Exploit, no. The disabled Aurelian warship suddenly transmitted an emergency signal. The message was directed toward the entire fleet. Its reactor had been stabilized temporarily, but its cooling system remained compromised. High Commander Kale immediately ordered 2 support vessels to move closer. Human sensors tracked their movement. Daniel watched carefully. Are they leaving formation? Malik answered. 2 ships are moving toward the disabled vessel. Vale studied the display. That makes sense. They're trying to tow it. Daniel nodded. Then Maya's voice came through. Commander, tell them not to restart the reactor. Daniel immediately asked, why? Because the cooling system hasn't recovered. If they restart at full output, the thermal cascade could become irreversible. Daniel didn't hesitate. Send the warning. Malik transmitted it through the diplomatic channel. Kale responded almost immediately. Earth Defense, your warning has been received. Daniel replied, your vessel's cooling network is compromised. Restarting the reactor at full power could destroy the ship. Kale's voice was cold. We are aware of our own engineering. Maya stepped toward the communications terminal. Commander, let me speak to him. Daniel allowed it. Maya addressed the Aurelian commander directly. Hi Commander Thorne, I'm Dr. Maya Chen. I personally repaired the power system aboard the Aurelia's Grace. Kale answered, you are the engineer responsible for the modifications. Yes, and that's why I'm warning you. Your cooling network cannot handle the current power routing configuration. There was a pause. Are you threatening us? Maya almost laughed. No, I'm trying to stop your ship from exploding. Kale's response was immediate. Your assistance is no longer required. The channel closed. Daniel looked at Maya. That went well. She sighed. I tried. Seconds later, the disabled warship restarted its reactor. Its power signature rose rapidly. Maya watched the thermal readings. They're doing exactly what I warned them not to do. The temperature climbed. The ship's shield system came back online, but its cooling system began failing faster. Then the vessel's outer hull emitted a brief flash. A section of its engine assembly shut down. Malik reported, partial systems failure. Maya whispered, they're losing containment. Daniel immediately transmitted a direct emergency command. Aurelian vessel, shut down your reactor immediately. There was no response. Another flash appeared. The ship began drifting toward the moon. Kale finally responded. Earth, stand by. Daniel looked at the display. Your ship is losing control. Kale answered, we have it under control. Daniel shook his head. No, you don't. Kale's voice hardened. Do not interfere. Daniel looked toward Vale. The admiral understood what was happening. They're afraid we'll board the ship. Daniel nodded. And they're probably afraid we'll steal whatever we can find. Maya stepped forward. Commander, if they don't shut down that reactor, they'll lose the ship and everyone aboard. Daniel made his decision. Launch rescue vessels. Vale turned sharply. Daniel, we are not attacking them. We're rescuing them. Their fleet will interpret that as an assault. Daniel looked at him. Then we'll tell them exactly what we're doing. 3 human rescue ships launched from the Resolute and moved toward the damaged Aurelian warship. The rest of Earth's defense fleet remained in position. No weapons were locked. No fighter craft followed the rescue vessels. Daniel transmitted the order repeatedly. Human rescue units are approaching to assist. Do not fire on them. The Aurelian fleet responded by tightening its formation. Several warships moved between the rescue ships and their disabled vessel. Daniel watched the tactical display. They're blocking us. Vale nodded. They don't trust us. Daniel replied, neither do we. The rescue vessels continued forward. Maya was aboard the lead ship, monitoring the damaged warship's reactor. We're almost there, she said. The Aurelian fleet issued another warning. Human vessels, halt your approach. Daniel responded, your ship is experiencing a critical reactor failure. We are attempting to prevent loss of life. Kale answered, your assistance is not authorized. Daniel's expression hardened. High Commander, your ship is dying. There was a long silence. Finally Kale replied, you have 3 minutes. Maya immediately began preparing the rescue team. The human rescue ship docked with the damaged Aurelian vessel. Maya and her engineers entered the engineering section, where alarms were already screaming. Tarek joined them remotely from the Aurelia's Grace. The reactor temperature is still increasing. Maya looked at the readings. Then we shut it down. Tarek hesitated. If we shut it down, we lose shields. Maya nodded. If we don't, you lose the ship. Tarek understood. Proceed. The shutdown began. The reactor output dropped slowly, but not fast enough. Suddenly, the ship shook violently. Maya grabbed the nearest support rail. What was that? Tarek answered, containment field fluctuation. Maya looked at the reactor. We've got one chance. Reroute the remaining power through the auxiliary cooling system. Tarek stared at her. That system cannot handle the load. Maya replied, it can for 30 seconds. And after that? Maya looked at the timer. After that, we find out. The auxiliary system activated. For several terrifying seconds, nothing changed. Then the reactor temperature began falling. Maya watched the numbers decrease. Come on. The temperature continued dropping. The alarms gradually stopped. Tarek exhaled. Reactor stable. Maya closed her eyes for a moment. Good. Then she noticed something on the diagnostic screen that made her expression change. The ship's main engineering architecture was transmitting a system-wide synchronization signal. Maya pulled up the data. The signal was not isolated to this ship. It was communicating with the other Aurelian warships. She quickly compared their system patterns. Commander, she said over the emergency channel, I need you to see this. Daniel's face appeared on her screen. What did you find? Maya turned the display toward the camera. The reactor problem isn't limited to this ship. Daniel stared at the data. Maya continued, the entire fleet uses the same thermal management architecture. Vale, standing beside Daniel, slowly understood. Every ship has the same weakness. Maya nodded. If I'm right, yes. Daniel looked at the 12 Aurelian warships surrounding Earth. For the first time, humanity possessed information that could potentially cripple the entire fleet. But before anyone could speak, a new warning appeared on the tactical display. One of the Aurelian warships had activated its weapons. Daniel's voice became quiet. Why are they charging weapons? Malik answered, unknown. Then the Aurelian flagship transmitted a message. Kalethorn's voice filled the command deck. Human vessels, remain where you are. Daniel looked toward the tactical display. Hi Commander, your ship has just been saved by our engineers. Kale answered, and now we know what your engineers have discovered. Daniel said nothing. Kale continued, you have identified a weakness in our fleet. Daniel looked at Vale, then at Maya's data. Yes. Kale's next words were almost a whisper. Then we have a very serious problem. For several seconds, nobody aboard the EAS Resolute moved. On the tactical display, the Aurelian flagship remained surrounded by its own fleet, but now every major warship had weapon systems powered and tracking the human rescue vessels. Commander Daniel Reyes looked at the display, then at Dr. Maya Chen's engineering data. Humanity had discovered something the Aurelian Compact had apparently never known about its own fleet. Every major warship shared the same weakness in its thermal management architecture. If Earth chose to exploit that weakness, the consequences could be devastating. Admiral Thomas Vale broke the silence. Daniel, we need to assume they've made the same calculation. Daniel nodded. They know we know. Then they're going to act before we can use it. Daniel looked at the Aurelian formation. Maybe. Vale turned toward him. That's not reassuring. Daniel didn't answer. He was watching something else. The Aurelian ships weren't moving toward Earth. Their weapons were active, but their engines remained at low output. They were afraid, not of Earth's fleet, but of what humanity had learned. Kalethorn's image appeared on the command screen. His expression was no longer controlled. Commander Reyes, you have discovered a critical weakness in compact military architecture. Daniel answered, your engineer would call it a design limitation. Kale ignored the comment. You will provide us with the data immediately. Maya stepped closer to the communications terminal. We can provide the data, but your fleet needs to stop increasing reactor output. Kale stared at her. You expect us to trust you after discovering a vulnerability in our ships? Maya replied, I expect you to understand that the vulnerability is already there. We didn't create it. Kale's voice became harder. You improved one of our vessels. Your modifications exposed the weakness. Maya nodded. Yes. Daniel interrupted before the conversation could escalate. Hi Commander, your fleet is sitting above Earth with weapons charged. Our defense fleet is doing the same. If either side makes a mistake, people die. We need to step back. Kale stared at him for several seconds. You are asking us to stand down while possessing information that could destroy us. Daniel replied, I'm asking you to stand down because we possess information that could destroy you. Vale looked at Daniel, surprised by the distinction. Kale noticed it too. You admit that you could exploit the weakness? Daniel answered honestly. If we had the right information in enough time, possibly. The Aurelian commander narrowed his eyes. Then why haven't you? Daniel looked toward Earth through the observation window. Because we didn't come here to fight you. Kale said nothing. Daniel continued, your ship came here damaged. You asked for help. We helped. Then your government brought a fleet because our engineers did their jobs too well. We have defended ourselves, but we have not attacked you. Kale's expression remained unreadable. You destroyed one of our drones. Daniel almost smiled. You destroyed our drone. Kale paused. That is what I meant. Despite the tension, something changed. The weapons on several Aurelian warships began powering down. Not all of them, but enough for Daniel to notice. Kale looked toward someone outside the camera frame and listened to a private report. When he returned his attention to Daniel, his voice was quieter. What do you want? Daniel answered immediately. A temporary ceasefire. Kale asked, and in return? We share the information about the reactor weakness. Vale turned sharply toward Daniel. Daniel ignored him. Kale stared at the human commander. You would give us the information? All of it. Why? Daniel answered, because if your fleet leaves here with a hidden failure, the next time you enter combat, you could lose thousands of people. We won't knowingly send you away with a weakness we could have helped you fix. Kale looked genuinely confused. You would strengthen a military force that could one day oppose Earth. Daniel nodded. Yes. Kale asked, why? Daniel replied, because if we become enemies someday, I want it to be because we chose to be enemies. Not because we let a preventable engineering failure kill people. Maya immediately began preparing the technical package. It contained the reactor analysis, cooling simulations, emergency shutdown procedures, and the modifications required to prevent the thermal cascade. She deliberately excluded several human engineering techniques that had nothing to do with repairing the Aurelian vessels. We're giving them the solution, she explained, not our entire toolbox. Vale nodded approvingly. That's the smartest thing you've said all day. Maya looked at him. I've said many smart things today. Vale smiled. I know. The data was transmitted through a controlled diplomatic channel. The Aurelian computers received it and began analyzing the information. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the Aurelian flagship sent a message. Your analysis is correct. Daniel looked at Maya. She nodded. I know. Kale continued. We have identified the same instability in every major vessel. Daniel asked, can you repair it? Kale answered, not remotely. Maya spoke up. We can help. Kale looked at her. You're offering assistance again? Maya shrugged. You keep breaking things. For the first time, Kale almost smiled. Perhaps your species has a strange sense of humor. Daniel replied, you should have seen the coffee meeting. Lyra Ven's voice suddenly joined the channel. She had been listening from the diplomatic station. I remember the coffee meeting. Daniel looked surprised. Ambassador? Lyra appeared beside Kale's image. Commander, I believe this is the moment when diplomacy becomes more useful than military doctrine. Kale looked toward her. You were right to trust them. Lyra shook her head. No, I trusted what I observed. The Aurelian fleet slowly began lowering its weapons. One ship after another powered down its weapon systems and returned to a neutral defensive posture. Earth followed. Human ships lowered their weapons but remained in position. Nobody celebrated. The situation was not suddenly friendly. There were still negotiations to conduct, questions about technology ownership, and serious concerns about the military power now present in Earth's orbit. But the immediate danger of war had passed. Daniel ordered all Earth ships to maintain their positions. Nobody leaves until we have a formal agreement. Vale looked at him. You really think they'll accept one? Daniel answered, no. Vale raised an eyebrow. Then why ask? Daniel smiled slightly. Because if we don't ask, we'll never know. The negotiations lasted 3 days. The Aurelian Compact demanded restrictions on Earth's access to their technology. Earth demanded guarantees that no Aurelian military force would attempt to seize human engineering research. Both sides argued over inspection rights, military access, scientific cooperation, and the legal status of technologies created during emergency repairs. Eventually, they reached a compromise. A new agreement was signed between Earth and the Compact. It became known as the Earth-Aurelian Engineering Accord. Joint repair teams would be established. Technology created through cooperative emergency work would be jointly documented. Neither civilization could claim ownership of discoveries made solely because the other had provided assistance. Most importantly, neither side would use emergency humanitarian aid as a justification for military seizure. 5 days after the crisis began, the Aurelia's Grace finally prepared to leave Earth orbit. Daniel stood in the same diplomatic lounge where he had first met Lyra. 2 cups of coffee sat on the table. Lyra looked at hers suspiciously. "I have reconsidered this beverage." Daniel smiled. "You've changed your mind?" "No, it remains terrible." Daniel laughed. "At least you're consistent." Lyra looked toward Earth. "Your species is difficult to understand." Daniel replied, "We're working on that." Lyra became serious. "Commander, your engineers gave us something more valuable than an improved warship." Daniel waited. "They gave us a reason to question assumptions we had held for centuries." Daniel looked at her. "And what did we get?" Lyra smiled. "A warning." Daniel frowned. "About what?" Lyra looked toward the stars. "You are no longer an unknown civilization." The Aurelia's Grace departed Earth's orbit alongside the Aurelian fleet. Human ships escorted them only as far as the edge of the system. For the first time in days, the solar system was quiet again. Daniel stood on the Resolute observation deck as the alien ships disappeared into the distance. Admiral Vale joined him. "Think it's over?" Daniel looked at the stars. "This part is." Vale nodded slowly. "And the next part?" Daniel didn't answer. Then every sensor on the observation deck activated simultaneously. Lieutenant Malik's voice came through the command network. "Commander, we've received a transmission." Daniel turned. "From the Aurelians?" "No, sir." The tactical display filled with an unknown signal originating far beyond the known Aurelian border. Daniel frowned. "Can you translate it?" Malik hesitated. "It's already translated." The message appeared on the screen. "We observed the Earth incident." Daniel stared at the words. A second line appeared. "You possessed the ability to destroy a superior fleet. You chose not to." Then a final message appeared. "Now we know what kind of civilization you are." The command deck fell silent. Vale looked at Daniel. "Who sent it?" Malik shook her head. "We don't know." Daniel looked toward the stars. Somewhere beyond the known galaxy, another civilization had been watching humanity. And now, for the first time, they had decided to say hello.